Oh, hello there. Yes, well, good grief. It is finally Saturday. Hooray for that. Yes, now you lot. Don't, whatever you do, carry on watching me. Go back to bed and make babies. That's going to be one of the big things that's going to come out. You'll no doubt see that in this country in a very short period of time, because yesterday, hurrah, the Heritage Foundation, you know, those people that definitely don't have a plan for Donald Trump, managed to come out with some other bits of their not plan for Donald Trump. He has pledged to get rid of the Department of Education. Wonder why? Why would you do that? Well, of course, so that, for example, their ideas can dominate. And they produced a very interesting report yesterday about, well, fertility. Apparently, yes, it's all about babies. Anyway, this one, educational policy reforms are key strategies for increasing the married birth rate, because America, like basically every other country in the world, maybe not Antarctica, not really quite sure, unlikely, basically women aren't having enough babies, so fertility rate is down to about 1.6, as it is basically elsewhere. Horrific, horrific, horrific. Why is it? Well, the Heritage Foundation definitely knows. So let's dive into the reasons for this and how easy it will be to sort out. So, three key takeaways here. The decline in the number of children Americans are having is driven primarily by values, priorities and government policies. Yes, you see, that's what that is. It's all about the American government's values, priorities and policies. I kind of find that a bit odd if it's an international thing, but it's obviously an international problem, isn't it? So let's dive into the other two in a little bit more detail as they put up on Twitter. Right, excessive government subsidies for higher education and useless credential requirements are inducing people to stay in school much longer than they otherwise would. Staying in school longer suppresses fertility by encouraging people to delay or not have babies at all. Yes, you see, and there's a bit of a quote from the report there about the way that, you know, women are having children later. But again, one of the problems with that, of course, is it's happening everywhere. So presumably it's an everywhere problem. So if women, for example, don't go into higher education because we don't want them to be educated, oh gosh, doesn't that sound a bit like certain countries you can think of? Not at the moment, might come back to that one. Anyway, yes, we'll somehow encourage them somehow to have children, despite the fact that all of the evidence across, you know, basically everywhere in the planet is that women are not wanting to have children. Presumably, that can be put back by simply encouraging, in inverted commas, them not to go into higher education. Now, a lot of this stuff, okay, in terms of the whole Trump agenda, not that there is an agenda, not that there's a plan, not that there's a project for 2025, definitely not from the Heritage Foundation, even though this is the Heritage Foundation I'm talking about, not that, right, okay? A lot of this stuff is driven by this very, very odd notion, and it's a kind of, hey, isn't it 1950 notion, in the sense that we can do all of these things, and manufacturing jobs will come back to America, and all those manufacturing jobs will involve very, very large numbers of people who don't need to be high skilled, because if you think about manufacturing jobs in the States, you know, in places like Intel, which are being in-house more, you can think about all the low-skilled jobs that they involve. If you really think about it. No, I mean, you really, no, think harder. Yes, you see the problem here? Because, yes, modern manufacturing isn't low skill. And in the same sense that any forms of manufacturing, or indeed modern jobs generally, are not low skill. But somehow, if we can exclude women in particular from higher education, we'll definitely get a higher birth rate, which will be really good. And we'll have loads more people that can go and work in the factories, presumably very cheaply, because, you know, they won't have many qualifications. And I can't see that having any real impact on any form of economic policy whatsoever. But, you know, that's just because I'm a dangerous lefty. Anyway, second major thing that they come up with, offering secular public schooling as the only tax-supported way to satisfy compulsory ed requirements induces, that word again, to provide less religious education to their children than they otherwise would. Apparently, more religious children tend to have more babies when they grow up. Yes, indeed they do. Indeed. But one of the problems, of course, is the decline in religiosity isn't to do with American schools not teaching it so much. It's to do with the fact that that's the way the entire world is going. the entire world is going. I would argue you're going to find a lot more atheists, for example, in Afghanistan than you ever have done beforehand. Oh, there's that place I was thinking of in terms of women in education. Yeah, there we go. But this notion, you see, is that if we can force people into, being more religious, they'll, have more children who can, work in the factories in those low-skilled jobs that everybody wants, yeah? Isn't it? Yeah? Isn't it? Surely. But if you think back to any form of social engineering like this, it always goes wrong. Now, some of you of a certain age, most of you, let's face it, because I'm probably older than quite a few of you, but younger than others, you know who you are, yes, will remember certain initiatives in the past. You may remember that there was a bit of a hoo-ha and scare about teenage pregnancy in the early 2000s, particularly in the UK, and there were various ways that people tried to stop it. In America, what they tried to do was the True Love Waits initiative, and do you know what? Drum roll, you never guess, drum roll. Yes, of course. What it did was actually push up teenage pregnancy rates, because you basically, once again, keep saying this about everything, trying to legislate for what people want to do. Women, I think, will not necessarily, particularly if you make it harder for them to go into higher education, simply say to themselves, oh well, I can't do that biochemical degree, I'll just have a kid instead. Because oddly, that isn't the way that things work. Not even in reality. No, not that. And just on a wider level, those sort of vaguely authoritarian governments that have tried to increase fertility, if they do certain things, they can increase fertility, but over time you get a law of diminishing returns. And I will suggest that very strongly that you look at Romania under Ceausescu. Here's the graph, okay? You can see that when he banned contraception and made abortions illegal, there was a real spike in the fertility rate. Hooray! Yes, and then look at what happened. Oh dear, it goes down and down and down until there's no more Ceausescu, and it carries on going down and basically doesn't recover much, even when, people aren't forced into it. So what's going on? Well, I don't know. Could it be, gosh, that that's what people want to do? Maybe women don't want to have more than one child. And maybe instead of basing an economic policy around what women have to do, we base on an economic policy about what we might want to do. How about a world with fewer people in it, where they're better qualified and, there's a lot more stuff generally? Yeah, there's a lot more green stuff. There's a lot more pressure, a lot less pressure on the environment. And generally speaking, women get a better deal out of it rather than, being handmaidens and perhaps not being very happy. But, we can all live in Afghanistan, can't we? Because then, of course, the Heritage Foundation and all those other very good Christians in Trump's cabinet would be very, very pleased. And in this country, of course, all those nice boys at the Lotus Eaters who really don't like girls much unless, they gritted teeth they have to speak to them, then, they can get their way as well. Yes, what a perfect world for some people. Anyway, do have a gorgeous weekend, and remember, England expects and all that stuff. Yeah. What was it Billy Bragg said? Yes. How can you lie there and think of England when you don't even know who's on the team? Oh, footballing analogy. Anyway, do have a lovely, lovely weekend. Yes. I think I've earned mine.